Hello YouTube, welcome back. It's been less than 24 hours, but here I am again, and I'm going to bug you some more. And today I'm just going to do a recap video, kind of. And if you didn't see my G40 customizations video before, then this is going to be an educational video for you. But this is going to be a recap video concerning all of my customizations for the Global 40 game, and these rules, all of these rules will be implemented in the YouTube game that's coming up in a handful of days now. So these rules are relatively simple. Again, if you've been playing the game for a long time, I've only been playing G40 for about 3 years, but if you've been playing G40 for any number of years, these rules should be relatively simple to you, easy to understand, especially if you've seen other customizations that are kind of as interesting or even more kind of almost to the point of being absurd. Some of the customizations, like from Hilltop Hillbugs in the 1936 historical board gaming game, there's a lot of customizations there. I mean, it's its own game, so they're not customizations, but they're definitely, according to G40, very, very odd rules. Very different, and there's definitely a learning curve there, and there will be a learning curve here too. But so yeah, we're just going to be going over all of my custom rules. We're going to be using all of these rules in the YouTube game, and recapping the old rules, showing you the new rules, and how the old rules, there's kind of some updates on them, and going over some general rules in the game that some people don't necessarily play, something to do with capital ships, you know, some rules that people don't actually implement in their game, but they're not necessarily my custom rules like these are here. Alright, and without further ado, let's get into this video, guys. So the first thing we'll start with, I guess, is the fact that the bunkers, they don't exist anymore. There's no more bunkers. And that's not because they're broken, not because they're too good, or not because they're really bad. It's just because in all the games that I play tested, I never bought bunkers. So they're just kind of not necessary, I guess. So I took them out, because if it's something that's not going to be there to just enhance flavor, then you don't need it. But anywho, let's get right on to this. So I wanted to start with probably the most complicated rule in the game that I added, if not the most complicated. Is Vici France. Now, when Germany takes France, or Paris here, boop, Germany's taken Paris with 0 troops left over for whatever reason, and also no one has any troops, but France is standing. Well, in this circumstance, when Paris falls, you roll a die for each territory that France controls. Now, the only ones you don't roll for are this cruiser that's going to be in that British fleet and the troops that are in the United Kingdom. So these 2 infantry, this fighter, these are going to stay free French. Okay? This cruiser in 110 is going to stay free French. All these other territories you're going to have to start rolling dice for. And also, this destroyer down here and that fleet, you're going to have to roll for those as well. So the outcome is shown here. So if you roll a 1 on a territory or a unit, the troops there become, and the territory become German. If you roll a 2 or 3, they become Vichy French, and a 4, 5, or 6, they become French. They stay French. Of course, their name is changed to the Free French, but I just added this cool World War I French infantry to show that they're not just Frenchmen, they're free Frenchmen. There's that difference. So, but there isn't really. But let's get it right into it. I guess I can grab a die here. So Paris has fallen. So we'll start with Normandy Bordeaux. We roll a die for them. It's a 2. Perfect. Now I can explain how this works, actually. So Vichy France. So Normandy Bordeaux has an infantry and an artillery. Now it get replaced with the Vichy French infantry and artillery. Now, to show that this territory, it's not German and it's not French. This is an interesting middle ground. So when a territory goes Vichy, you just kind of cover up the control marker that the French have. I don't care if you use a penny or whatever. Of course, there's going to be a lot of different notings and identifications of things from board to board because not all the people that are going to be playing this game are going to have all the stuff that I'm going to have. But you just go ahead and cover up the French token, the French control marker with something, and you replace those troops with other troops. Or, I mean, you could honestly leave them with that to show that they're just free or Vici French. But what Vici French are is they're neutral now and they're pro-Axis. So they work the same way a pro-Axis country like Bulgaria or Finland would work. They're just sitting there. Germany can march in. They can grab those $2 of income, and then this infantry and artillery would just join the Germans. These two troops will also defend against the Allies if the Allies decided to amphibiously assault Normandy, Bordeaux. Now, doing this wouldn't activate strict neutrals again because they're pro-Axis neutral. But these troops don't do anything on their own. They just sit there like a pro-Axis nation, and they don't collect income just like a pro-Axis nation. So that was because in the other games that I played, when Germany was just taking stuff to take stuff, it let them do a lot of nasty things. And so I wanted them to actually at least have to march into some of the territories that turn Vici instead of just taking things, taking a whole bunch of stuff. So that happened to turn Vici. That's fun. Let's roll here for southern France now, or Bordeaux. And look at that. Solid German. So this infantry and artillery are getting replaced with some Nazi equipment right there. And that is a German territory. $3 that the Germans get just because. And probably on the first turn. So let's roll this fleet here now. That's a 5. So 4, 5, or 6 stays French. So the French actually get to keep their fleet. And that is probably Italy rolling their eyes right now saying, come on, why couldn't you have gotten the one territory that would have helped me out, huh? All right, Morocco here. 2, so that turns Vici. We put a Vici infantry there. And we cover up this token. So now, of course, we're going to be ticking down the French income according to how much money they're losing here, because this money is coming off of their economy. Then we'll roll for Algeria here. That's a 1, so that turns German, which is nice for the Germans because then they're going to be able to march into Morocco and gather that money. So there's Algeria, German. Now we'll roll for Tunisia. That's a 1. That's also German. Maybe I should roll that die in my hand a little bit more. All right, let's roll for French West Africa. Oh my goodness, that is a 1. And this infantry is stuck to that artillery. That is German. So now this French West Africa is the single territory. I think that gives Germany a real advantage in Africa because they can grab this free money basically. Theoretically, because this is going to be, theoretically, on the first turn that Vici happens, because France usually falls on the first turn. So, on the first turn, you know, they've got this infantry now, and Britain doesn't have anything around. All they have maybe is an infantry here to move over, but turn 1, turn 2, money, turn 3, money, turn 4, money, you know, probably. And then that's finally when they're going to have to be dealing with the British. Probably the British are going to be too busy with the Italians to just move over to deal with the 1 infantry. But that's an extra buck. So they're making an extra, buck already, of course. That doesn't include anything else. Then an extra $2, then $3, then $4. Yeah, and so you can see kind of how that is very advantageous for the Germans to take this French West Africa territory specifically. All right, so let's move on to French Central Africa here. Not a 1, please. Oh my goodness. Unbelievable. They don't get an infantry there. Well, scratch that, taking that money. They already took it. All right. Shake it up like this. Let's see, you get a 1 now. French Equatorial Africa, not a 1. Okay, it's a 5. So that stays French. Whoop-de-doo. They get a buck, but I mean, I guess it's there. Don't know why, but I moved the infantry off Syria. But we'll roll for Syria now. Not a 1. It's a 5. So Syria stays French. All right, now we roll for this destroyer down here. Does it turn Vici? It turns German. Big surprise, guys. Man, the amount of 1s. If I rolled this well in combat. But no, it's got to be on the video where I'm showing you Vici France. All right, we're rolling for Madagascar now. Not a 1. That's a 2. Okay. So that turns Vici. I mean, better than nothing. So that's pro-axis. So, I mean, that's just, I guess, nothing for anyone. It's just the French don't get that. So now, we got French Indochina. 3. That turns Vici as well. So actually, the Japanese can march in there and take that for kicks and giggles. And they would not be declaring war on the British. That's actually really interesting. They wouldn't be declaring war on the British if they did this. Well, I guess it's the Commonwealth, so that really wouldn't matter, actually. So, and then we have the New Hebrides. That's a 4, so it stays French. And technically, we have French Guiana over here. And that is Vici. Again, that one doesn't matter. Neither does New Hebrides. But roll for them nonetheless, because their territories, they're French, and they must be rolled for. So there you go. That would be an astounding outcome for the Germans. I mean, they've got these 2 territories here. That's 2 bucks. And infantry, they're going to take the Gold Coast or Nigeria, start wreaking havoc in Africa. And the Italians now have a huge advantage in North Africa because of this. This is silly. I've never seen rules like that for the French, but there you go. Nonetheless, it happened. Now where the Italians are going to have to worry, though, is they still have that French fleet there. And then, you know, France is just gone. It's half Vici. Well, 2/3 German, 1/3 Vici now. Which sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Except you just kind of do that instead, and no one will tell the difference. All right, so there you go. That's the French. I'll move on with the next house rule, but there you go. I just wanted to show all of that. I won't be showing full-blown examples like this for each rule, but I just wanted to show you guys that visually so you could completely, fully grasp and understand how this rule works. All right, moving on. Okay, well, since we're here, I decided to move on, keep the subject on the French to keep things less confusing, but we'll talk about France's capital movement. So when, not if, but when, the Germans come in and they take Paris, France leaves the game in the out-of-box rules, and this really upsets me because France was definitely not a big factor, but definitely not a small factor in World War II. They were definitely a present force in the Allied armies. So that's definitely more said in Africa, but they were there nonetheless. And this game does not portray that appropriately, in my opinion. So when Paris falls, you know, yes, you don't get the Vici in the out-of-box rules. So France still has units, but what they can do with those units is virtually nothing. Okay? And it really upset me to see that France just kind of dies off throughout the game. And once they lose Paris, they can't build anything else, so they can't actually boost the game back up. There's nothing they can do. Nothing at all. So I decided to change that. And this is kind of to counterbalance, directly counterbalance the Vici France rule, to where France is kind of getting actually a nerf, buff down, I guess, to actually buff them back up and make them a playable nation. Now, I did say in the last video that I wouldn't recommend that France is a nation that's played by one person, but I honestly forgot about this rule. I watched two of my videos to refresh me on my own rules to see kind of, you know, what was tweaked since then, and yeah, I reminded myself of this. I mean, I already remembered, but I didn't in the video, and realized that yes, France is now a playable power. Of course, it's going to be pathetic still, but it's there nonetheless, okay? So, how this works is when Paris is taken, the capital, which I'm just using this to visually show you, the capital is in Paris when France starts the game. When Paris falls, they don't lose their income. They lose the money because their capital fell, but they don't lose their income. Okay, their capital moves to the United Kingdom. So now the United Kingdom is the capital of Great Britain and France. Okay, so France does not share Great Britain's economy. They just share the production here. So France can now, they keep all the money that any territories that were kept Free French, which were, it was Equatorial Africa, Syria, the New Hebrides, and that's it, I think. So that's $4 that the French are making. Well, they can actually still collect those $4 because they have their capital. So it's not going to be that the rule doesn't kick into where you can't collect money, you don't have your capital, because they do have their capital. It's just moved. Okay? They can purchase units and use the factory in the United Kingdom as if it was their factory because their capital is there. Now, the only thing they don't share, like I said, is the United Kingdom economy. So they're not collecting the $6 just because they have their government in exile here, basically. Doesn't mean they use their economy. They just use their economy, but they're using the United Kingdom soil to pump out their arms. All right, so I hope that was self-explanatory and simple enough. We're going to move on to the next customization. Righty. Moving on to the first unique unit of the customization rules, we have Cavalry. Now, if you watched the customizations video, you know exactly what they do, but if not, I'll tell you right here, and I'll tell you there is an update in that new countries can buy cavalry. So, before, Japan could buy cavalry units, but now France and Russia can also buy cavalry units. Now, France can do it because it's a cheap attacking unit that they kind of can afford, I guess, because this is kind of to balance with their economy, because they're not going to be buying infantry and artillery all the time. So they're going to need to buy something if they want to buy offensive units. Boom, cavalry. Russia just needed an offensive kick, and they can buy infantry and artillery. Again, that's just a money saver for them. So I have two different examples here. I have an artillery piece, or not artillery, cavalry piece of each color corresponding to the nation. But of course, I also have the cavalry token underneath an infantry. So this is just to show that, of course, you guys are going to be, again, using different tokens and notations than I'm going to be using to show different specific units. And so even if you're using pennies and whatever for certain things, I don't care as long as you are very, very explicitly clear and specific in what the units are in your videos. We don't want to go around seeing pennies and thinking they're all elite infantry or something, and not even all countries get them. But again, that's a new one. But we don't want that. We don't want to get that confused. So you've got to be clarifying exactly what notations you're using are for what types of units. So cavalry units cost 3. If I remember properly, there might be a note on the screen that's different, but they cost, they cost 4. Okay, that's right. They cost 4. They moved to, see, I don't even remember, guys. I have it written down, but I don't remember. Okay, so they cost 4. They're a blitzing unit that can blitz by themselves, and they move 2. And they attack at 2 and defend at 1. So they're basically the opposite of a mechanized infantry with the same cost. However, they don't get to blitz with tanks. They blitz without tanks. And they cannot be boosted by artillery. They cannot be buffed by artillery when they're attacking with artillery. That doesn't increase their attack like it would infantry, because they already attack at a 2. So cavalry are just going to be good cleanup units. Especially for Japan, moving into China. There's a lot of land territory they got to take there, and so cavalry are going to be useful. And I also believe they're going to be pretty useful for Russia, because Russia, sometimes they do actually like to go offensive, and having that cheaper mobile unit that can attack well is going to be pretty handy for them. So that's that. That's cavalry. All right, on to the next. Alright, moving right along, we have Russia. Russia has kind of one of the weirdest, just a little bit off the wall ability that they have. Now, it's not a unit, it's not a special, really, really special rule like Vici France, but it's just an ability that they have, and that is partisans. So I'm going to tell you exactly how partisans work right now. So partisans are literally just an event, kind of. They're not a unit, and they're not a big Vici rolling whatever. They're just kind of their own little event that happens in a territory. A revolt against the occupier. So if an Axis force moves in, say this is a combat move. They're moving in, they're taking all these territories, right? And they've taken these four. Well, now these four territories in the back here are unoccupied. What happens is when Germany ends their turn, if these territories are unoccupied, a partisan will just pop up. So the people realize, hey, there's no German army here to keep us in check. We're going to revolt. Now, on the Russian turn, okay? On Russia's turn, those turn into infantry. So now, guess what? The Germans decided to get ahead of themselves, and now all these partisans on the Russian turn will turn into infantry units, and boom. Well, now Germany has lost $2, and they have a buffer. They can't be blitzing. These are moving their tanks up to support the front line now because they have this buffer here, and that is going to be most unfortunate for the Germans if they are leaving those spaces empty. So don't do it. The German player, don't leave those spaces empty. I actually, for one, I'm going to be completely honest, when I play tested the games, I forgot to play test this, and this is the single reason that Germany was so overpowered in Russia, because Russia didn't have their answer to those heavy tanks. This was the direct answer to those heavy tanks, and they didn't get them because I forgot. So there's that. But make sure to keep each other honest here, guys, and remind the Russian player, whoever that's going to be, to pop up with their partisans and be using these infantry to get under the German skin and take advantage of that ability that they have. All right, let's move on to the next customization, guys. Side note before anyone asks me, if a German territory is left unoccupied, these pop up. They do not cost anything. I figured someone might ask, well, how do I get them there? Is it something I have to do on their turn? Do I have to pay for them? So no, you don't have to pay for them. They're completely free. It's an automatic event. So when the Germans leave a territory unoccupied and they end their turn and that territory is still unoccupied, that they have taken from an ally, from Russia, any Axis force taken from Russia, that will just pop up for free on its own at the end of Germany's turn, and then on Russia's turn into an infantry. There's no cost. There's no you have to do it during a certain phase. It's just there. It happens, okay? So I just wanted to clarify that before we move on, before questions are asked, all right? All right, now here is a really, really fun unit, and that is Elite Infantry. Now, Russia and Germany are the only nations currently that can activate the Elite Infantry ability. Now, Elite Infantry are not a unit that can be purchased. Nay, they are a unit that is made. So, I guess I should actually have a regular infantry here to kind of give you a visual of how this works. So, when you have a battle, say Germany moves in, let's do that. Let's just reverse it. They've taken Iraq, which is pro-Axis, gotten the infantry. They move in and try to take Saudi Arabia, okay? So now they're moving in with their infantry, and if they win that battle, any infantry that are left over, they can promote one to an elite infantry. So that's how elite infantry work. If you battle, if you attack with infantry, and this can only happen twice per turn, but if you attack with land troops and some of your land troops are infantry and your infantry survive, you can promote one of them. One in that battle, up to 2 battles, okay? That's the limitations. Up to an elite infantry. So when you promote an infantry to an elite infantry, their stats now become they attack at 2, they defend at 2. So they're not getting a movement bonus. They still move 1. They still, do everything that infantry can do. Now, the only thing that does get knocked off is the artillery buff. They do not get buffed by artillery after they are elite infantry. Again, because they attack at 2, just like cavalry don't, because they attack at 2. So we don't want artillery buffing things to be attacking at 3, turning infantry into tanks. That's a little bit much. So that's the way elite infantry work. If you have any questions on that, again, well, if you have any questions on anything, of course, comment down below. I'll have answers for you, and we'll move on to the next customization. Alrighty, now we're on to the a German advancement only, and that is the heavy tank. Now, again, different notation here if you're not going to be using this tiger sculpt here. And I did, if you notice here, I did get a non-spray painted version of it. Hey, I went to Historical Board Gaming and bought a handful of these for the customizations. Shortly after I made the video on the customizations, actually went out and bought these online, got them shipped so that I could have non-spray painted versions, just because I wanted non-spray painted versions. Okay, that's it, that's all I wanted. But of course you might not have those, so again, just setting them on top with some notation and specifying very, very clearly in the videos is also fine. But heavy tanks cost 10 IPCs. They attack at 4, defend at 4. I'm just going to do that for OCD's sake, because why not? Nah, not OCD, but nitpicky for sure. So they attack at 4, defend at 4, cost 10. Now, you might think that that is kind of outrageous, and it is pretty expensive, but you have to take into note that they're a battleship on land, okay? They do not have 2 hits like a battleship, unfortunately, but here is their buff. Mechanized infantry, when they are moving in to a territory alone, attack at 1. Artillery would buff them to 2. Well, heavy tanks also buff mechanized infantry to 2. So, when you have a heavy tank blitzing in with the mechanized infantry into a territory, the heavy tank acts as an artillery to this mech and buffs the mech to 2. And that's 1-to-1 for each heavy tank buffs 1 mech. So 3 heavy tanks would buff 3 mechs, and so on and so forth. Obviously, that's how it works. So up to 2. So heavy tanks are very, very good for the Germans on the mobile attacks into Russia. So I remember in my last game, I ended the game with about 6 of them on the board, and I think that was the entirety of how many I purchased. But I purchased them nonetheless, so they're not a void unit. They are actually extremely useful, all right? And so they still move 2. Just want to clarify that. I don't have the movement arrows set up on this one, but they still move 2 like a normal tank. And they attack at 4, defend at 4, cost 10, and they buff mechs just like artillery. All right, let's move on to the next customization. Well, now here we are in the Pacific, and we're going right to the Commonwealth. So the Commonwealth is a customization that concerns the Far East Command. And I don't seem to have another roundel for them, for West India there, but boop, there we go. So, basically Anzac and the Far East Command become one, or the United Kingdom Pacific become one nation, and they share an entire economy. So, all of the British territories on the Pacific side of the map, including the entirety of India, join this nation. Okay? So that's quite a bit of money that Anzac is getting, theoretically. And I just wanted to clarify, all the units become Commonwealth as well. So those 3 infantry that were in Malaya, that were British, don't stay British because they're Pacific British, so they would just join the Pacific Commonwealth, okay? Now this could also be called the Far East Command now, because it's not just the Commonwealth. I did, like I said, there would be tweaks. Canada is no longer part of the Commonwealth, and this is because that's just money. I figured if Canada was part of the Commonwealth, then, you know, the Commonwealth is going to have to buy stuff there and kind of help Britain out, but they didn't. They didn't buy anything in Canada. And they just spent all of that, I think it's about $6 more here each turn, and that's why Japan, one of the reasons why Japan got so screwed on that that game that you guys saw me recap. Man, my English. So yeah, just wanted to clarify, all of the territories in the Pacific except for Canada up there and West India, so all the Pacific territories in West India, and then you exclude Canada, are Far East Command. Now, to whom it may concern, these little islands are also Far East Command. Now, this doesn't really matter in terms of strategy, planning, or they're still allied territories, but it does matter diplomatically, because if Japan wanted to come down and take the Gilbert Islands, and it's still owned by just Britain, well, they declare war on Britain and not the Far East Command. But if it's Far East Command, well, then that changes things, and that gives them much less incentive to attack the Gilbert Islands. Unless, of course, Japan has a J1 attack that involves, for some reason, the Gilbert Islands. Then, of course, they're going to go for it, because it's J1. And you go for everything on J1. Alright, so that's the Far East Command. All of the British troops there would be set up with we'll just say FEC troops, that West Indian Infantry would. And then, of course, Anzac is part of the Commonwealth, and all their units stay the same. Alright, let's move on right along, guys. Another note here is about the turn order. Now, you might think the Far East Command would go after Britain and before Italy because they were once part of Britain. They were Britain up here, and so Britain still goes before Italy. They're part of Britain, so they go before Italy. No. They become part of Anzac, and basically Anzac's turn is the FEC's turn. So they're going after Italy. So Britain goes, then Italy goes, then the FEC goes. France, of course, poor France, they still go last. But the FEC will get all this territory and all that. They will still go second to last, just like Anzac would normally would. So Anzac still has all of the same diplomatic rules, or FEC, all the same diplomatic rules as Anzac and the Pacific Britain, and all the same rules. It's exactly the same. It's just their turn is taken exactly like Anzac controls their territories. That's the only difference. All right, let's move on. Okay, moving on to a Japanese-specific unit. Here we have the Yamato. Now let me see if I can find there's one right here. The sculpt from the Japanese battleships from 1940 are actually the sculpt of the Yamato. So that's actually what the Yamato looked like. But all of their battleships are sculpted in that way. So to identify the difference between a normal battleship and the Yamato mega battleship is, I just got a battleship that, the Italian battleship, because the Italians were orange in that game, from World War I. The Axis now has 1914 game. Alright, so here we go. This is the Yamato. There it is in all its glory. Pretty, isn't it? Cool. So it costs, I'll have that number up on the screen. I actually completely forgot what it costs, but I believe it's 20. And it attacks at 4 and defends at 4. Okay, that I do remember. I cannot believe I forgot the cost of this thing. Again, that's why I had to watch the videos, because I remember the rules, but I don't remember details, which is bad. Of course, now I know, I remember, and it's fresh in my mind. I won't forget during the game, guys. I swear. I swear I won't. Okay, so the Yamato is unique from battleships in the sense that it can take more damage, okay? So a normal battleship, when it takes a hit, you put damage on it, or of course you'd be tipping it if you don't have damage counters of some kind. But you take a damage on it, and now it has 1 health left. Well, the Yamato has 2 health left, so it can take another damage, then it has 1 health left. So the Yamato has 3 hit points before it actually sinks, whereas the normal battleships have 2. It still attacks and defends at 4, but this thing has, it can take some extra, sap some extra hits on those very, very important naval battles, okay? Another interesting thing is that the Yamato has a built-in anti-air gun. So if you are in a battle, a defensive battle, the Yamato is defending a territory that some, say, American Air Force comes in, well, just like in a land battle, the anti-air gun shoots first before the Air Force engages, right? Same thing here. The Yamato gets this anti-aircraft fire off before the Air Force can do anything. So the Yamato in itself has the ability to just end a small Air Force before sea combat begins. And so that's the Yamato, guys. Oh, another thing is you can only ever build 1 of these. That is actually very important, and I'm upset I almost forgot that. But you can only build 1, and once it's dead, it's dead. So you want to make sure to be repairing this, because you're going to lose a 4-4 3-hit anti-airship. Okay? And it's 20. I believe it's 20. I'm going to have it up on the screen if that's wrong. But if I remember correctly, it costs 20 IPCs. But you can only ever build one. You build one, it goes around. Once it's dead, you can't build another one. And you can't build two at the same time. There's just one. It's a single one purchase unit. That's it. Alright, let's move on to China. Okay, here we are on China now, and this might immediately look pretty stinking funky to you because in out of box, China can only build infantry. Well, I changed that up, folks. So China can build artillery and tanks in my G40 customizations, my house rules, okay? They can build artillery and tanks as long as the Burma Road is open. So Sichuan, Yunnan, Burma, and India are all occupied and controlled by, or not occupied, but controlled by Allied forces. Then artillery and tanks are open for the Chinese to build and place on their turn. Now, they'd place artillery and tanks anywhere on their territories just like they would their infantry. And they cost the same. There's no buff or nerf to the Chinese units. They're no worse than anyone else's. There's not, unique stats for the same unit amongst countries. So they cost the same and they can be placed down just like normal. Now, the only catch here is the tanks. They're just like the Yamato in the sense that you can build a limited number of them, and those, once they die, they die. Now, with the Yamato, you can only build one, and once it's dead, and you can only have one ever in the game. Well, with China, you can have two tanks. So, one more than you can a Yamato. You can have two tanks as China. You can build one on, say, turn 1. Okay, you build one. That's fine and dandy. If it dies on turn 2, it's dead. It's gone. It's extinct. Out of the game forever. But you still have one tank that you can buy. Okay? So you buy this tank on turn 2 as a retaliation of Japan killing yours. They'd say on turn 5 or 4 or whatever, it dies. Well, guess what? You can no longer own tanks for the rest of the game. You have 2 chances to do something cool with the tank, and if you don't, guess what? You'll never get to. Alright, so that's literally it. China has a very, very simple rule set. They can buy artillery, they can buy tanks as long as the Burma Road's open, and they can only buy 2 tanks in the entire game. Moving on. Alright, America's next, the good old US of A, and they have the special ability to lend-lease. Lend-lease units to other nations, specifically China and Great Britain. So the way this works is, they would purchase those units that they're lend-leasing just like they would their units. They spend their money, they buy the units on their turn, and those units get it sent to the mobilization just like they normally would on their turn, okay? Of course, these units are going to be sent to other nations when they're placing their troops, okay? So the United States can buy 2 Chinese infantry and 1 destroyer up to that amount. Now, of course, they could only buy a destroyer and no infantry, or they could buy 1 infantry and a destroyer, or just 1 infantry, or just 2. Doesn't matter what combination you use here. But the max is 2 infantry and a destroyer, 2 Chinese infantry, 1 British destroyer on an American turn. Once you buy it, this all goes to the mobilization zone. At the end of your turn, America would place these troops. Excuse me, I just sneezed there. And the Chinese infantry would be placed anywhere on Chinese territories, just like they normally would. So the limitations are there. So when America places their troops, they place the Chinese troops down, and then they place the destroyer. Now the destroyer has to be built in C-Zone 109 here. Okay? It has to be built in C-Zone 109. The only exception to that rule is if there is a surface warship, an Axis surface warship in C-Zone 109. In that case, it would be built in 106 there. Okay? Be built for Canada instead of Great Britain, I guess. So, it has to be built in 109, and if there's a surface warship from the Axis, it's built in 106. Now, if it's built in 109, and say there's a German submarine here, that does not prevent this destroyer from being built because it is not a surface warship, it is just a ship. Okay? Just like a transport wouldn't prevent it from being built either. Of course, there's no combat immediately because there's no combat phase, obviously, so nothing would die right away. But there you go. You build it here. If there's not a submarine, or if there's a submarine, you can still build it there. But if there's a destroyer, cruiser, or battleship, or carrier, then it's got to be built over here in 106 for the Canadians. Now, if there's a surface warship in 106, well, then you can't lend lease to Britain. I'm sorry. That's just the limitations there. Now, with China, that would also apply technically, okay? When you're placing the Chinese infantry, you place them down in wherever they can go legally in the territory China controls. And you place them down. Now, if China doesn't control any territories, obviously you can't do this. But I will say the Burma Road does not limit this lend-leasing of land units. Say Japan has all of these territories. China's left this, this, and this. Burma Road's closed. Doesn't matter. America can still sail in and fly in they'd be flying in these infantry to help China. Okay? They can still do that. This is not a declaration of war from America to any of the corresponding nations. Okay? So if the Americans buy this British destroyer and then it attacks a German U-boat, and it's like, well, America bought something that attacked me, so that's a declaration of war. No, this is a British unit. Okay? The Americans have nothing to do with this other than the fact that they built it, but it is owned and operated, and the responsibility of it is fully taken by the British. Okay? British Empire. Same with the Chinese. They are just training the dudes, sending them in. Then they put on Chinese uniforms, and the American in them never happened. Okay? They were Chinese from the beginning. They might look a little funny, but they're Chinese now. Okay? So, the Chinese attacking the Japanese does not make the Americans declare war on Japan. Alright, so there's America's ability, fun little ability, and let's get right on to the next one if I have one left. Gotta look real quick, but let's move on, guys. So we're deep into the war here, and Great Britain and Italy have been trading hands in Africa with certain territories, and America has finally captured Rome. Rome has fallen, and that's not supposed to be there yet. What happens when Rome falls is actually very interesting, and this is why I would not recommend that a player plays Italy alone. That whoever plays Germany plays Italy as well. Because once Rome falls, everything that Italy owns becomes German. So northern Italy there, it's German now. We have a fighter. We have an anti-air gun. We have an infantry. Yugoslavia, guess what? That's German. Albania, that's German. Greece, guess what? Turns German. Now we have that little Italian dead pile there. This submarine and destroyer. Lucky day for the Germans. Egypt. We've got more Germans. Right? You get the point here. Everything that Italy had. I'm missing one German infantry here. Everything that Italy once had now becomes German. Boop, boop. Alright. Now, bad news for the Italians. They do not want to lose Rome under any circumstances. But, good news for the Germans, who just got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 IPCs out of the blue added to their income. And now, guess what? They have territories to defend. So this is actually an advantage and disadvantage for Germany. They have all this extra money that they can do stuff with. Now that is, of course, assuming that Italy had anything in Africa, because if they're losing Rome, then it's likely that they wouldn't have anything in Africa. But Germany now has all this money that Italy has gathered for them, and now they also have to defend said territory or they're going to lose the money and give the Allies a flanking ability. Because if someone's landing in Rome, that means they're going to have the ability to amphibiously assault. And Yugoslavia here is open, Albania here is open, and you see Britain already has units here on Egypt, and amphibious assault joining that, taking Cairo back. Not cool, man. Not cool. Alright, so another interesting thing is all of the Italian victory conditions. So Italy has victory conditions, one of which is Rome, one is the Mediterranean, and one is North Africa. All the victory conditions that Italy could meet now have to be met by Germany. They can still be met. Okay? And that's why I'm saying Italy doesn't just go away. They don't vanish. They do leave, but they're replaced. Okay? So if the Germans take Rome back by the deadline... Whoa, shaky camera there. Almost dropped my phone. If the Germans take Rome back by the deadline of the game, then they would still get that victory point. for having control of Rome, like the Italians would. Okay, if they somehow miraculously take North Africa back here, they would get that point. And if those two ships, if say the Americans just had to transport and took Rome, well, now they think that, well, technically they would already have the Mediterranean because that's not a warship. So that's still a point for the Axis because the Italian victory conditions become German victory conditions. All right, moving right along here, guys. Let's move on to the next one. Hope you're enjoying so far. If you have any questions, like I said, comment down below. I will answer them. And we'll move right along. And here we are in the finale. Just wanted to clarify that the rule on capital ships. Now, aircraft carriers and battleships are called capital ships. And out of box, battleships can take 2 damage before they're sunk. Carriers cannot. Now, I take this for granted all the time because everyone uses the rule that carriers can take 2 damage because they're capital ships. But technically, out of box, carriers only have 1 hit before they are sunk. And so I just wanted to clarify that in this game we will be using the house rule. Again, it's not my house rule like I said in the beginning. These won't be all my house rules, but this is a house rule, technically, that carriers or capital ships, they can take 2 hits. Now, if a carrier is damaged, no planes can land on it, okay? So if you're defending and you ask someone, hey, you have a carrier and it's loaded in the sea zone that I'm attacking, where do you want to take the hits? And they say, well, take them both on the carrier. Because if I take one, take the first 2 on the carrier. Because if I take one, then the planes are going to just crash. So you may as well take both, and then say there's a territory right next to it where the planes can land. So you would sink the carrier. Of course, you could do that. You could not. Of course, it's this is just me fantasizing here, just to tell you an example. But yes, so we're going to be playing with the capital ship double hit rule on carriers. Just wanted to make sure everyone knew that going into the game. Everyone knows all the rules we're using ahead of time. All right. Okay, this is one big difference from the out of box and from the previous G40 customizations video. Now, in the previous video, I said there were no setup changes. In this one, there are. And again, this is all being play tested, but there is going to be a minor factory starting in Korea for Japan and a minor factory starting in Amur for the Russians. Now, this is kind of because the Russians can do nothing over here against the Japanese. And, of course, this front is fun. You have the Mongolian rule, and that kind of flavors it up a little bit more. Gives the Japanese even less incentive to attack. But the Russians needed to be able to do something there, and the Japanese needed something in response. Now, the reason I gave the Japanese a factory in response, I was thinking maybe cavalry, maybe some more infantry or tanks. The reason I give them a factory is because, so they can pump out land units in the mainland. Because, of course, Japan's first turn, they usually buy a factory here in Kiangsu. And it's usually a minor, and then later they'll upgrade it to a major and buy more minors. Well, they have one there, and the reason it's a factory is because of the FEC. The FEC is going to be so powerful with the combined income of the Pacific English and Anzac that Japan is going to need something in response. And being able to pump out land units on the mainland from turn 1 is definitely an appropriate, not overpowered, but appropriate response. And Korea is obviously a good spot for it. Now, legally, it could go in Manchuria. Again, I chose Korea because, well, you're not pumping out stuff on the front line. You're not pumping out units and then smacking India right away, right? You're pumping out units way back here. And also, I did not want a factory on a Chinese territory to start the game, where if China would take that territory back, they wouldn't be able to use the factory. I wanted it on a Japanese territory, and it made more sense to go on Korea. It's balanced better to go on Korea. So there you go. There is the only actual setup change to the game, aside from the FEC, obviously, but adding actual units to the game, this is the only difference. And now we'll go on to the last part, guys. All right, one last and very important thing here before we wrap things up, and that is the victory conditions of this game that we will be playing. Of course, you guys are going to need to know how you're going to be winning the game, right? Not just playing to play, but playing to win, obviously. So each country has a certain amount of objectives that they have that generate victory points at the end of the game, right? So for Germany, they can produce a total of 4. Control of Berlin and Warsaw is 1. Control of Leningrad and Stalingrad is 1. Controlling Moscow is 1, and controlling London is 1. So, that's Germany. That's all the points that Germany can generate for the Axis. Now, no country can dip into another country's victory points. So Italy can't control London and have it be a point because it's not Italy's victory condition, it's Germany's. Now, the only exception to this rule is when Italy falls and Italy becomes Germany. Germany gets to consume Italy's victory conditions. And I explained that earlier in the video. So, for Russia, control of Moscow is 1. Control of Leningrad and Stalingrad is 1. Control of Warsaw is 1. Control of Amur, Sakha, and Buryatia. I don't know how to say that. I mean, even Amur gets me sometimes because I want to say Amur or Amur. Buryatia. I mean, it's these 3 territories here, if you didn't know. But Buryatia. Buryatia. I'm going to call it Buryatia. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't care. I mean, I'd like to know if I'm wrong, but I'm still going to call it Buryatia. So Russia can generate 4 for the Allies. And then Japan can generate 5. They have Iwo Jima and Okinawa is 1. All the Chinese territories is 1. Hawaii is 1. Sydney is 1. And the Pacific is 1. Now, I'm going to emphasize right here, control a sea area. So control of the Pacific means, and this is going to be nearly impossible for the Japanese to do, but starting with this half of the board, in this entire half of the board, no allied warships can be present. That is how you control a sea area. So no Far East Command warships, no Russian warships, because they will have a factory there. So fun fact, they can build ships there, and no American warships can be present in the Pacific. And if that is so, they will get this point. So that is a point that is going to be very, 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 very difficult for the Japanese to get. But they can get it. It's possible. American victory points, they can generate 5. Hawaii is 1. The Philippines are 1. Rome is 1. Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia together are 1. And China still exists, is 1. So I also will emphasize this. China still existing, some of you may take that as China still has territories. If China has territories and no troops present on the board, that does not count as a victory point here. So China must have at least 1 territory and at least 1 troop left on the board for that point to count. But if China has 1 territory left and they don't have any troops, then China does not exist in terms of this victory condition. Okay? Just want to clarify that before someone tries to find the loophole. Oh, China had a territory left, so they still exist. No. They have to have troops as well, or at least 1 troop. All right, so on to Britain. London is 1. They can have 3 points. London is one of those points. All original territories is one of those points. And this is all original British territories. So now that India and all of the British troops on the Pacific side of the map are not British, these territories do not count. Ceylon does not count. West India does not count. Samoa down here does not count. Fiji doesn't count as a British original territory. So the British original territories are the ones in Africa, Canada, here, Iceland, the one in South America, and then the rest of Canada over there behind my empty glass of milk. Those are the British territories. And that's it. Of course, you have like Transjordan, Cyprus, Malta, but on this half of the map, basically. And then Canada, you replace that with West India. Okay? And then control of North Africa. And now this is another one I'm going to emphasize. I've seen games where North Africa is Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Tobruk, and Alexandria. Well, in my version of the game, it is all of these territories and Egypt. Egypt to Morocco, every single one of these territories is North Africa. You have to control all of them to have the North Africa victory condition, okay? So that's Britain, and then Italy can generate 4. Rome is 1 for them. Yugoslavia, Greece, and Egypt together are 1. Now this one actually might prove difficult because Yugoslavia is probably going to be taken by the Germans on their first turn. Now this is where the Axis are going to have to collaborate between Germany and Italy. Yes, Germany could easily come in here and take this and get that money, right? Absolutely they could, and they do a lot. But since now it is a victory condition of Italy's to have Yugoslavia, Greece, and Egypt under their control, Germany is going to want to hold off and let Italy take this when they can, because if they don't, well, they're sacrificing a victory point for $2 per turn. And really, I mean, $2 per turn, yes, it's nice, but is it worth possibly losing the game? In my opinion, no, it is not. So, going to have to be careful there, what Germany does. The Mediterranean, control the Mediterranean. And again, Italy, this is one of theirs. And again, control meaning no allied warships. And you must have a warship present. So Japan has to have a warship, and there have to be no allied warships. And Italy has to have at least 1 warship, and no allied warships in all of these sea territories right here in the Mediterranean. Okay? That's that victory condition. And then North Africa, like I said, from Egypt to Morocco. That's North Africa. And then on to the FEC. Calcutta is one of their 3. Hong Kong and Sydney. It's that simple. You got Calcutta, Hong Kong, and Sydney down here. All right? So that's the victory conditions, or the victory points that each nation can generate, and the totals thereof. Now here is how the game is won. The Axis victory points, they start with 3. And I believe the 3 they start with are Okinawa and Iwo Jima together is 1 that Japan starts with. Rome is the one that Italy starts with. And Berlin and Warsaw is the one that Germany starts with. So each Axis power starts with 1. They can get a total of 13, but to win the game they need 11. So victory points are victory conditions that the Axis could leave out. I mean, the more difficult ones to get, like Japan controlling the Pacific and Sydney. I could see those 2 points being the 2 that are left out of the game if they're getting the 11, if they're going for the 11 win, right? But you can leave any 2 out because your total is 13 that you can get. So say you don't get North Africa, but you do end up getting Sydney, well, you still hit the 11, so it doesn't matter how you get it. You got the 11, you win the game as the Axis, okay? Allied victory, they start with 12. So this is definitely a kind of reflective of the actual war. Axis starting with a little bit, Allies starting with a lot. The Allies' job was to defend what they had, and the Axis was what to take what they didn't, right? Makes sense. The Allies can get a total of 15. The 3 they can get are 1 from Germany, 1 from Rome, and then North Africa, I believe, are the 3 they don't have. So 1 from Warsaw, 1 from Rome, and 1 from, North Africa. So they actually have to get all of those, every single victory point they can to win right out, okay? If no one wins before round 15, then you count up the victory points, and whoever has the most at the end of the game would win. Or if a nation reaches 100 IPCs in income, that side of the game has an economic victory. And so the last time I played, you'll notice on the Germans had 85 IPCs, so it was around 16. So they had only taken 3 IPCs more, so 82. So I got reasonably close to this, but we'll see what we can do. I want to see someone go for this. I want to see, say, the Japanese player go for. I'm like, ignore all of the victory conditions. I'm going for 100 IPCs, baby. Heck yeah! I mean, it's possible, but it is highly, highly unlikely. All right, so there you go. Now you guys know how to play the game. All the rules. We're going to be using all of these rules in the game. Okay, that's how you win the game. If round 15 comes about and no one has, the allies don't have 15, the Axis don't have 11, then you count them all up, and whoever has the most wins. All right, and now on to the outro. Alright guys, well that wraps up the video, and I want to say a huge thank you to anyone who is going to play this game with me. You are playtesting, and I think that is so, I appreciate it so much. It's awesome that people are going to be willing. 2 people already, No Limit and the Warden, willing to jump on board and say, hey, I like these rules, I want to play a game, let's do this, jump on board and just say, let's go, let's play, let's use these rules, and let's abuse these rules. Yeah, do it. Break the game if you can, absolutely, the rules are there. I mean, they can't change mid-game, so break the game if you can break the game. Of course, that'll be something due to change, but if it could be broken, I would like to know, and I'll fix it for the next game. And then hopefully you won't be able to cheat after that. But I appreciate so much anyone who has the Warden and No Limit and will jump on board and be totally willing to playtest these rules that I've concocted. That you know, they could be balanced, they could not be. I mean, in my opinion, they're pretty balanced so far. But of course, there's been changes and additions. So yeah, it's due. Playtesting is due. All right. So also, just want to thank No Limit for all the help that I got immediately, but that was awesome. No Limit, just amazing. You sent an email right away, descriptions and explanations. That video you sent was awesome, so good. So, of course, like I said, we're playtesting. So, while we're playing the game, throughout the game, at the end of the game, let me know how you guys liked or disliked the customizations. And right now, if there's something that you think is completely absurd, let me know. If there's something that you think is super awesome, let me know. It's never good to have a positive compliment about someone and hold it to yourself, because you don't know how much it can lighten someone's day up, make them, how happy it makes people just to receive compliments. Because you know what? People like hearing that they're good people. You know that? So tell them more, all right? Now, again, if you guys have any questions, let me know down in the comments. I will explain anything that I did not explain too thoroughly in this video if you need it. And if not, then don't. But comment what you want to see in the future. This was, of course, requested by Young Grasshopper. He said he wanted to see this. Here it is, the recap video. And like I said, whatever you guys want to see, it's coming. It's coming. And I am doing this the day after I come back, because like I said, I am here to be a presence now, and I'm here to stay. So I'm not going to just float around and disappear off the face of the earth again. I am here to contribute, and this is my contribution. All right? All right. Leave a thumbs up if you liked it, a thumbs down if you didn't, and don't make it criticism. Leave a reason why you didn't like it. Make it constructive, guys. I love you all. I will see you in the next video. This is Enderman 103 for the first time saying peace out.